Welcome to the Explainer. Today we're asking a question that sounds simple, but wow, is it complicated. Is cyber law even real law? I mean, it affects every single click we make, but most of us have no idea what the rules are. So we're going to use a fantastic chapter on its biggest myths as our guide and just debunk the most common stuff people get wrong about our digital lives.
So, let's kick things off with this wonderfully cynical quote from David Frost. It just perfectly sets the stage for our dive into cyber law, right? It's a world where the logic can feel, well, cold, harsh, and totally impersonal. And that's the thing. What feels fair isn't always what the law or, the code actually says.
And that really gets us to the heart of the puzzle. I mean, think about it. You understand the rules for your front lawn, right? You know what's yours, what's not. But do those same exact ideas of property and privacy actually work when we're talking about our laptops and our data? As you're about to see, just trying to apply the old rules to this new world, well, it doesn't always work.
Okay, so here's our game plan. We're going to look at old laws bumping up against new tech problems, the whole borderless chaos of the internet, what your rights really are on social media, what happens when code clashes with law, and then the big one, should you even worry? All right, let's jump right in. First up, let's tackle a really foundational myth here. It's this idea that we can just, copy and paste our real-world laws and slap them onto cyberspace. It sounds logical, sure, but it's just not that simple. This was the obvious starting point for judges and politicians. To make any sense of this new digital world, they just reached for metaphors they already understood. So a password, that's like a key. A digital file, that's a paper file and a cabinet. And these comparisons are a decent starting point, but as we're going to see, they fall apart really, really fast and end up creating some huge problems. And this image, it just perfectly captures the central debate, which is famously known as the law of the horse. And the question is really this: is the internet just so different, so unique that it needs its very own set of laws? Or is it just another thing, like a horse, that can be handled by the legal rules we already have for stuff like contracts or property? And this whole debate was really captured by two brilliant legal minds. On one side, you had Judge Frank Easterbrook. He basically argued that creating a special cyber law was just silly, like having a special law of the horse. He thought, the general laws we have against fraud or trespassing, they should be good enough. But on the other side, Professor Lawrence Lessig was saying, no way. He insisted that cyberspace was a totally new frontier, and it absolutely needed its own specific rulebook to avoid complete chaos.
So that leads us right into our next big myth. And it's a comforting one, but it's totally false. It's this idea that your local laws just kind of follow you around online and protect you no matter where you are. Okay, so in the real world, right, jurisdiction is simple. Geography is king. A crime happens in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, law applies. Easy. But the internet, it just completely demolishes geography. There are no borders. And that creates an absolute nightmare for a legal system that's built from the ground up on physical location.
This slide just shows the problem perfectly. Okay, let's walk through this crazy scenario. You've got an attacker in Russia. They use a server that's physically in Ireland to hack a US company. But the person whose data they steal, they happen to be on vacation in Indonesia. So all of a sudden, you've got count them, 4 different countries involved. Whose laws apply? Russia's, Ireland's, the US, Indonesia's? I mean, this is the jurisdictional mess of the internet in a nutshell. And this quote from a computing lawyer really gets at part of the problem. If you can see it, you can sue it. And what that means is, if someone harms you online, you can often go file a lawsuit in your local court. But, and this is the huge but, just because you can file the lawsuit doesn't mean your local court has any actual power to enforce its decision against some person or company in another country. All right, now let's dig into a myth that I absolutely guarantee you've seen being argued about in a social media comments section somewhere. It's this whole belief that platforms like Facebook or TikTok are violating your freedom of speech when they take down your post. People just love to pull out the First Amendment whenever their post gets deleted. But what they almost always forget are the first and most important words: Congress shall make no law. So here it is, the key distinction everyone misses. The First Amendment is a rule for the government. It's there to stop Congress from passing laws that censor you. It does not apply to private companies. Facebook, TikTok, X, they're private platforms, not the government.
And they are totally free to set their own rules for what you can and can't say on their property.
Okay, think way back to when you first signed up for that service. You clicked that little box, right? The one that said you agreed to the terms of service. Well, that click, that created a legally binding contract. So when a platform yanks your content or bans your account for breaking those rules, it's not government censorship. They're just enforcing the private contract that you agreed to.
Okay, so platforms can legally take your stuff down. But what happens when you want something removed for your own privacy and it doesn't actually violate any rules? This leads us to another massive misconception, the idea that you can just use the law to make things disappear from the internet. If only it were that easy.
The absolute classic example of this backfiring is, of course, the story of Barbra Streisand. She found out an aerial photo of her house in Malibu was part of this public coastal erosion project. She sued to have it taken down, citing privacy. Now get this. Before she filed the lawsuit, the photo had been viewed 6 times. 6. After she sued, it was viewed by millions of people.
And that whole phenomenon was so perfect, so clear, that it now has a name, the Streisand effect. It's really the ultimate paradox of the internet, isn't it? The harder you try to hide something, the more you end up broadcasting its existence to the entire world. This brings us to a more philosophical question, but it's an incredibly important one. In this new digital space, what's the ultimate authority? Is it the legal code written by governments, or is it the computer code written by programmers? There's this really powerful idea, especially from the early kind of optimistic days of the internet, called code is law. The whole argument was that cyberspace was its own independent territory. In that world, what you could or couldn't do wasn't limited by a government, but by the software itself. If the code let you do it, then hey, it was legal.
But that dream of a totally independent digital world has pretty much proven to be a fantasy. The reality is, code is written by people who live in actual countries. The servers that run the code, they're in physical data centers. And courts all over the world have made it crystal clear, again and again, legal code, the law of the land, is always supreme.
And that brings us to our final and maybe the most personal myth of all. It's the belief that, hey, as long as you haven't done anything wrong and the law is on your side, you're basically safe online.
Yeah, unfortunately, the stats here paint a really grim picture. This number is it's staggering, 0.3%. So what that means is for every 1,000 cybercrimes that get reported to the FBI's complaint center, only about 3 of them ever get solved. The sheer volume of crime, plus that whole borderless chaos we talked about earlier, it means that even when you are 100% in the right legally, the law often just can't protect you.
And this really leaves us with the defining question of our time. I mean, the law is built to be slow, to be deliberate. Technology moves at the speed of light. So as tech keeps getting further and further ahead of policy, who should we actually trust to write the rules for our digital future? Should it be the programmers who build it, the politicians trying to regulate it, or the companies that are profiting from it? There is no easy answer here, but figuring one out is one of the most urgent challenges we all face.